Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello, happy Tuesday. Let me start with a 2020 campaign commercial. Surely by now you've seen or heard this as it's been retweeted since Sunday afternoon.
Sick of this? Well, think about this. He's a world leader in temper tantrums. She never loses her cool. She prosecuted sex predators. He is one.
Grab him by the...
She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest banks in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion. He's tearing us apart. She'll bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is the anti-Trump. So if that's what you're looking for in your next president, there's really only one. Kamala.
Y'all, that is a 4-year-old campaign ad, and it still slaps today. It resonates. It hits. I have a hard time not being excited about a candidate who runs with that kind of campaign ad. And that was 4 years ago. Then again, maybe this is all undone because of, let me check my notes here. The way she laughs? Sean Hannity, Sunday night.
Here's just one reason that voters seem to detest Kamala Harris. You decide.
Okay, so...
You are everyone, right? We are special. You know,
And is that a socialist or progressive perspective?
No. I thought we were supposed to conserve things. I couldn't reconcile it. Now I can.
Okay, Sean, but what about the substantive stuff? Because that's very superficial. I mean, I'm not shocked, but that's very superficial. Sean, come on, give us some substance. Why do you loathe Kamala Harris?
She wants to ban plastic straws. I love my plastic straw. I hate those paper straws. Anyway.
Yeah, me too, but that's not really something I'm going to hang my who am I going to vote for hat on. Okay, you know what? Sorry, let's pace ourselves just a little bit because we still have like 105 days of this to parse out. There's going to be 3+ months of right-wing outrage. And I have to be honest with you. I'm a little warm. I get a little warm and fuzzy because our conservative brethren and sisterin on social media are so concerned for us liberals and our votes. They're sticking up for our primary votes, y'all. Oh, you do care about democracy and our right to vote. Yes, they are all over Twitter and Facebook, the X platform, and Facebook, concerned that the 14 million votes in the primaries are now not going to count. Okay, two things, and I want those of you on the left who need the clap back. And I'm not saying that you're not smart enough to have it yourself. I'm just saying for those who don't have it, here's the clap back. The good news is we get to vote again in November. Okay, we get to decide then if what the Democratic Party has apparently chosen to do, and it looks like that Vice President Harris has enough Democratic delegates to claim the nomination. We get to decide in November if we abide by that, if we agree to that. Remember now, the slate of delegates that are chosen in each state are tasked with doing what the will of the voter in their state is. In fact, we're going to have a Georgia delegate on in just a few minutes. Seth Taylor, who's been on the show before, he is a delegate here in Georgia, and kind of want to get a little bit behind the scenes. How did this all play out? What kind of communication were you getting from the campaigns or the party or both? How was this all playing out? We'll get a little bit behind the scenes from Seth on the anxiety-riddled past week or so, or 3 or 4 from his perspective. But That's what the delegates are going to do. They're going to go to the convention, and there may even be the premature roll call that happens, the virtual roll call, so that we know all the states get their information so they can put their ballots together. Many of them, some of them before the convention. I never understood that. Anyway, those who are concerned about the 14 million votes, well, those of 14 million who voted also, number one, voted for Kamala Harris because the incumbent already has a vice president attached to them. As was the case, by the way, in 2020 with Donald Trump and Mike Pence, until the awkwardness of after the fact. Trump had to pick another vice presidential candidate for this go-around because they don't seem to get along too well anymore, Trump and Pence. Can't imagine why. Anyway, voting for Biden in the primary season was a vote for Kamala Harris as well, as the backup plan, as the second in command. So it's already a tacit nod. I would say 99.97% of those 14 million votes would have said, yeah, no, this is fine too. But also, those 14 million votes, those who cast those 14 million votes, get to vote again in November. And the better news is we don't have a president in place who's going to try and subvert the will of those voters or the tens of millions of other voters who are going to participate in kind throughout the rest of the country outside of the primary system in the general election. There'll be no insurrection. There'll be no ginning up of hatred and fear and division to storm the Capitol, to cause chaos in the certification of the electoral votes. There'll be no false slate of electors or any. Rest easy, conservative friends. Thank you so much for your concern for the votes of us liberals and progressives throughout the country. It's super sweet, but we got this. We're okay. And you can tell because do you hear a groundswell of complaining? I don't. Did you see that we fundraised like more than $81 million in a 24-hour period? In fact, I believe it's over $100 million now. And small donors. I mean, there's no $45 million Elon Musk check in there. There is no massive George Soros check either, for the record. Good grief. No, thank you for your concern for the 14 million votes in the primary system. Super appreciative. Love you for that. But it's okay. We're good. We're good. Democrats are in array, not disarray. We are in array. And Madam Vice President appears to have the delegates to sew up the nomination. There's been talk, by the way, I got to love this. Joe Manchin yesterday. Did you hear about this? Joe Manchin was kind of considering rejoining the party. I mean, by all means, Senator Manchin, you're welcome back into the party if you'd like to mount a challenge to Vice President Harris. And, by the way, then pivoted to say, well, I don't want to be her vice president. I'm looking around. We're all looking. Did anybody suggest Joe Manchin for vice president? Is that the only way you'll rejoin the party? You'll rejoin the party if you can be the nominee for president and de facto head of the party. You left the party, sir. Thanks, but no thanks. It's a no for us. So, Madam Vice President headed to Delaware to greet her campaign staff. It is now her campaign and her campaign staff. But before she did so, who called in? Who interrupted her campaign gathering?
And now I'd like to introduce a man who we all admire and respect because he has done and continues to do so much for our country. Mr. President, thank you for calling in today.
Oh.
Over to you.
That's nice.
Julie, if I didn't have COVID, I'd be sitting there with you, standing there with you. I'm so proud of what you've all done. And but this COVID keeping me out of people's hair for the next 3 or 4 days. But I'm going to be on the road, and I'm not going anywhere. It's kept me away a little bit, but I want people to remember that what we have done has been incredible, and we get so much more we're going to get done. And so I want to say hello to Kamala if she can hear me. I know she's going to be speaking shortly, and I want to say to the team, embrace her. She's the best. I want to call today to thank everybody. everybody in this effort. I know yesterday's news was surprising, and it was hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. I know it's hard because you poured your heart and soul into me to help us win this thing, help me get this nomination, help me win the nomination, and then go on to win the presidency. But you're an amazing team. But we've got a great. I think we made the right decision. I know how hard you've worked, how many sacrifices you made. And so many of you uprooted your lives for me, and the kind of commitments few people make for anything these days, but you made it. And I've been honored and humbled. I mean this is from the bottom of my heart. My word is a Biden, that for all you've done for me and my family. And we built the best campaign in organization in history. I've been doing this. I always kid and say, I know I'm only 40, but I've been around a long time. I don't know of a better campaign organization, grassroots campaign. We have over 230 offices opened. We have over 2,000 paid staff, and we have literally several thousand volunteers on a regular basis, thousands of them. And they've been relentless and tireless in reaching out and contacting voters. The leadership of this campaign has been amazing. Jen O'Malley Dillon, Julie Quinton, Michael Tyler, Rob Flaherty, Rufus on raising money, and so many more. You built this team. You brought them together. You brought us together. You've inspired them, and you've done what leaders do. Now we got to, the name has changed at the top of the ticket, but the mission hasn't changed at all. And by the way, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be out there in the campaign with her, with Kamala. I'm going to be working like hell, both as a sitting president, getting legislation passed, as well as in campaigning. What we still need to save this democracy. And Trump is still a danger to the community. He's a danger to the nation. And just ask my foreign policy colleagues, my counterparts, and other people around the world and at home. Look, so I'm hoping you'll give every bit of your heart and soul that you gave to me to Kamala. And I want you to know, I won't be on the ticket, but I'm still going to be fully engaged. I've got 6 months left in my presidency. I'm determined to get as much done as I possibly can, both foreign policy and domestic policy. Keep lowering costs for families, continue to speak out on guns and child care, elder care, prescription drugs, and climate. Climate still is the existential threat that we face, and if we don't win this thing, it's all in jeopardy. And we got to keep working for an end to the war in Gaza. I'll be working very closely with the Israelis and with the Palestinians to try to work out how we can get the Gaza war to end and Middle East peace and get all those hostages home. I think we're on the verge of being able to do that. And we got to keep our alliances together. It's critically important. It took a while for me to build these alliances. Most of my colleagues have acknowledged that, but it's critically important for our safety and security. And I know I'll be doing whatever Kamala wants me or needs me to do in addition. So let me be real clear. We're still fighting in this fight together. I'm not going anywhere. And I want you to know you've always had my back, and I promise you, I will always have your back. And I'm anxious for you all to hear from Kamala. So thank you, Julie. You're the best.
That's the President of the United States addressing the campaign staff yesterday as Vice President Kamala Harris came into Delaware to also greet the staff. We'll have some audio from that as well, but we're also going to speak in just a minute with Seth Taylor. He is a Georgia Democratic Party delegate. Get a little behind-the-scenes recounting of how the last few weeks maybe, have been for a delegate sitting on the fence, almost literally. We'll talk with him when the Ron Show returns on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, wherever you podcast. Thank you for listening to The Ron Show. You can follow us on your preferred social media platform. That would be at Ron Show ATL, the Twitter X platform, Instagram, Threads. I think I've tied my Instagram and Threads now, or maybe Facebook. Yeah, I know I'm on Facebook as well. I'm just saying, I've got all these tied together now so that those of you who are following me on Threads don't feel left out. Seth Taylor is a Democratic Party delegate. We've had him on the show before. Seth, honestly, you've been on my mind a lot the last few weeks because I have to imagine the roller coaster ride from the debate performance to the calls for the president to step down, even the attempted assassination on the former president Donald Trump, and now the president deciding on Sunday he is going to drop out of the race and endorse Vice President Kamala Harris, who now apparently has enough pledged delegates to seek the nomination at the convention. Anyway, it's been quite a roller coaster ride, and I was just wondering, what this has been like for you to sit here and be a pledged delegate for the president, but also you have to have been quietly in the back of your mind going, I don't think this is going to go the way we expected it to.
Ooh, boy. How much time you got, Ron?
Yeah. So what have the last few weeks been like for you?
All right. So Thursday night, the debate night, we'll call it 627.
Yeah.
Obviously, me and my fellow Democrats were rattled. You know, I was so despondent that Grace Dimmitt, the Democratic candidate for Georgia State House District 49, who's on the autism spectrum, just like me, her service dog, Rosie, sensed my discomfort and came over and nuzzled up next to me.
Oh.
And then that's when I went home and I thought to myself, don't agonize, organize.
Yeah.
So the following Saturday, I went to Tricia Gephardt's house, and me and my fellow and 50 other Democrats, we went and wrote postcards to potential voters in support of President Biden. And we just decided to stay the course and keep working and supporting President Biden. And then all of a sudden, this past Sunday, President Biden did the right thing. He put the country before himself, which is a completely foreign concept to Donald Trump. And when I got the news that President Biden decided to drop out of the race, I was blindsided and shocked. You know, kind of freaking out at first. But ultimately, I called Esther Panich, or she called me, and she comforted me, saying, we're going to get through this, that better days are ahead. And ultimately, President Biden endorsed Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. And you probably saw the headlines about how much money we raised in this 24 hours since that decision.
Yeah.
$81 million, baby.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's approaching six figures now since the announcement. So let me ask you this. As this was all playing out, what were the communications like between the campaign or the party and delegates? What were they telling you in the days leading up to his decision? Because he was saying all along he wasn't going to drop out, and then Sunday just suddenly did. So what were the communications like between the campaign and delegates?
I'm not at liberty to go to any specific details, but I'll just say that me and my fellow Democrats, we were going to be aligned behind whoever the nominee was going to be. And then when we were united behind our president, and then all of a sudden he drops out, and we're now lined up behind Queen Kamala.
So, I mean, were there any conversations being had or were about the process? Because I know, like, in the convention, after the first vote, you're free to do whatever you want. And so that there was all kinds of punditry on cable news and opining about how this could play out if delegates decided to split from Joe Biden. Were there any sort of reminders on how that was all going to play out if it had to play out that sort of way? Are you at liberty to even tell us that?
Not that I can recall, but all I know is that President Biden had a great career as a public servant, being one of the youngest senators ever elected back in 1972, and then becoming Obama's VP in 2009. And then we voted for him over Donald Trump in 2020. I remember when the networks called the election for President Biden in 2020 and Kamala's viral video. We did it. We did it.
Yeah, that's
You're going to be the next president of the United States.
Oh my gosh, you that's a pretty good impersonation of her. But you got to work on the laugh. You got to work on the Kamala laugh because there you go. Yeah, there it is. Okay, you've got this. Yeah, Sean Hannity loves the Kamala laugh.
But wait, I'm not finished.
Okay,
I'm not finished.
Okay.
And then President Biden, after being sworn in as president, he signs the American Rescue Plan Act into law, signs the CHIPS Act into law, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, appoints Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first ever black woman, to the United States Supreme Court, and also appointed more black women to federal appeals courts than any president before him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's been a very transformational president.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the media doesn't give him a lot of credit for it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I feel like this opportunity that he's given the vice president also unmoors the rest of his presidency to do what needs to be done without worrying about re-election or polls or blowback or any of that nature. And also sort of frees her to be able to be independent of maybe the way he would handle things. It's an opportunity that I hope both of them take advantage of. Look, I got about 30 seconds to wrap up. I just wanted to thank you for giving us a little bit of insight into the anxiety that had to be the last month or so as a delegate for the Democratic Party.
Oh, dog, we are fired up. We are ready to go. I mean, I am just so ready to put bleach blonde, bad belt convicted felon in his place and let him ponder all meanings of the phrase prison loving.
Oh my gosh. Seth Taylor, Democratic Party delegate. Thank you for joining the Ron Show this morning.
You're welcome, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
Call or text The Ron Show anytime at 404-919-2725. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
I have to remind myself to invite you to do that more often, by the way. And so I did after the announcement that President Joe Biden would be stepping away and that he had endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as, I guess, a measure of telling delegates who had pledged to him, please consider doing so for Kamala Harris to replace him atop the ticket. So I did so on social media. I said, hey, you know what? By the way, I don't do this enough. Here's the phone number. Want to get your thoughts on everything that's transpired since Sunday night. And so we have a couple of calls that I want to share.
Hey, Ron, it's Calvin of Atlanta. Just calling because I got the word about Joe Biden stepping down and actually passing the baton to Kamala Harris. Joe Biden is amazing. Absolutely amazing. To me, this shows him putting country before himself. Once again, the man has done an outstanding job turning the country around since he's been in office. He spent most of his life in politics working for the people since 1972. I'm pretty sure it was a tough decision for him to step down. But when you look at it strategically, I think his decision today was smart. Stepping down after the RNC convention was over and Donald Trump is sealed in place as their nominee. Now, with Biden stepping down and passing the baton to Kamala Harris, I think it's going to bring new life to the Democratic Party. Now, yeah, there are a lot of people that are looking at it like you're only 107 days out from the election and you do something like this. You're forcing Joe Biden out. You're allowing the media to control this. Mm-hmm. I don't see it that way at all. Sure, the media played a part in this by constantly focusing on Joe Biden's age and how he fumbled that debate,
right,
instead of focusing on how old Donald Trump is and how much he lied in that debate.
I want to pick up on that point just a little bit because there is this narrative, most of it, again, coming from the right. I just love how concerned they are for those of us in the Democratic Party, those of us who vote in Democratic primaries, about our vote not mattering. But again, do you see an upswell of revolt within the Democratic Party? Has anybody yet? I mean, sure, I'm sure they can find one lemming to file a suit. Where did my vote go? What is my... No, I mean, again, when you voted for Joe Biden, you voted for Kamala Harris at the same time because they are a pair on the ticket. But again, yes, the media complicity in the narrative after the fact cannot be overstated. That being said, we have to also assess the performance of the then candidate who was atop the Democratic Party ticket. And his performance in that debate was not good. It wasn't. The party immediately tried to, after the fact, tell us, oh, well, he had a cold. Okay. Where was that information beforehand? Oh, well, he'd done a lot of traveling. Yes, but he'd had 13 days off to recover from that traveling. And I would tell you the same thing. I would tell anybody of any age, don't fly to Europe, spend some time, and then come back for 2.5 days and then fly back to Europe. That's bad. That's bad on the body. It's bad on a 50-year-old body. It's bad on a 30-year-old body. It's really bad on an 81-year-old body. So we have to be honest about that. Yes, Donald Trump did lie, and it's unfortunate that the lies that he spewed in that debate, didn't get the attention deserved from the media, but I think also the performance of Joe Biden in the debate was enough to distract their attention and ours too from what should have been the focus, which was all the lies. And honestly, again, if we're being honest, if someone were on that debate stage and sharp as a tack, ready to combat those lies, that would have been the focus. That's why I feel a lot better, honestly, about Kamala Harris being the next person who will share a debate stage. That is still supposed to happen, I believe. September 5th, right? As long as Donald Trump doesn't back out. And then there's supposed to be a vice presidential debate. We don't know who the vice presidential nominee will be for the Democratic Party yet, but there's supposed to be a vice presidential debate. There's the convention itself, and I forgot to mention this yesterday, the 4 televised appearances that I think Democrats can really see poll boosting in is when Joe Biden addresses the nation, which we assume will be later this week, maybe early next week, once he's well enough. Play all of these right, and these are all poll boosting numbers in an already tight race. Let's take another call.
Hey, Ron, this is Daryl. Love your show. I'm thinking with Biden bowing out of the race, and if Kamala Harris is our nominee, this helps us with 4 constituencies in November. The youth vote, people of color, women, and those interested in the right to access to reproductive health. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Not that Joe Biden's record for all 4 of those constituencies wasn't already strong. Unfortunately, I think maybe not in all 4 of those subsets of voters, but I'll definitely say the youth vote. I think his age was becoming such a distraction, but also the Israel-Gaza war has driven a wedge between the ticket and grassroots activists. I would also say, dialing this down even locally, the Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility situation was going to be a drag on the ticket and may still very much be a drag on the party from the top down. A lot of grassroots activists here in and around Georgia are very upset that public safety training facility, which we understand will be near completion by Election Day anyway, has not been handled better by local Democrats, and that state and federal level Democrats in elected office haven't really weighed in much on that or said a thing about the boxes and boxes of petitions that have been signed by more than 100,000 Atlanta resident voters to have the safety training facility put on a ballot as a referendum measure. So, yeah, I think with Kamala now atop the ticket, obviously people of color, women of color specifically, and as Daryl mentioned, those interested in the right to reproductive access should be more invigorated to vote for Kamala Harris than they might have been for President Joe Biden. President Biden, obviously a Catholic, has always sort of walked that fine line when it comes to reproductive access by having his personal religious views, but also dividing them, having a bit of a firewall between what are his religious views on a personal matter versus a governmental policy. I want to pivot real quick because a story broke here recently that should be, I think, somewhat concerning. And joining me to discuss this, I believe you're the 13th president of the Georgia chapter of the NAACP. Is that correct? Gerald Griggs joining us.
That's correct, and thank you for having me, Ron.
I appreciate that. Before we dive into the AP African American Studies course going away in the state of Georgia, I just want to ask if you have any reflections on seeing an African American woman now atop a major party ticket.
Yes, we are witnessing history in real time. I didn't think in my lifetime I would see one, an African American president, but now two, an African American female being at the top of the nomination for any major party. So we're watching history in real time, and it's an exciting but yet distressing time in our history because of the backlash that we are continuing to see.
That, and you see, and maybe this is something that is heartening, I would think. You're starting to see overtures now in full force, I think, from both parties to woo the African American vote. Obviously the African American vote has always been important to specifically one party, I would say, more than the other. But now it seems like there's an earnest effort to try and win over the black vote from the Republican Party.
Yes, there is an effort to court the African American vote from both parties, and that's good. But we need more policies that speak toward the needs of African Americans, and not just attempts to, voice the need for us to vote in a certain direction. Black people will go where the policies speak directly to their issues, and I think that this is an issue that both parties have a problem with. So hopefully as we move forward in this discourse, we'll see policies that speak to the needs of African Americans.
Yeah, I would say that the right usually coming towards an African American voter with the "what have you got to lose" pitch is not exactly a positive sales pitch. That's not
a positive sales pitch, especially when what we have to lose is the teaching of our African American history,
right.
the recognition that there is a race issue here in America that needs to be dealt with. There is systemic racism. So I don't think their opening salvo into this conversation is very appealing at this point. Yeah. But of course, we're open to listen.
Yeah. Which brings us to the story that we came together to discuss here. The Georgia school superintendent declining to adopt AP African American Studies for the state's public schools. That means that state funding will be provided. No state funding will be provided to underwrite the cost of the class. But that doesn't mean, I guess, necessarily that county school districts can't do that on their own. It's just that there will be no state funding for it. I wanted to get your reaction to that. It's got to be disheartening.
It's definitely disheartening, especially in 2024, in the birthplace of civil rights, that we will not be providing funding to local school boards and the boards of education for teaching of AP African American history. And I think it really shows where we are in our political discourse. When the bill passed, which was a House Bill 1084, we said that this was going to be an issue, and it is. I don't see how the teaching of African American history is a divisive concept. And so I think that the school superintendent is incorrect in this assessment, and that the action and policy initiatives that he's setting forward are going to set us back and clearly show an animus towards the African American population here in Georgia, which is 3.3 million. So I don't know why somebody would do this. I don't see how this is going to cause any group of people to feel bad or to do anything that's going to cause divisive debate within a classroom. It's just educating people on African American history, which is American history.
I was just going to ask you how much of what is taught in AP African American Studies should actually just be, I don't know, exposed to the general population in public school, period. It seems as if there's a lot that's missing in our nation's history when it comes to the African American experience. It's all very much glossed over quickly in a couple of pages and a couple of chapters here and there.
Yeah, I think it should be taught inclusively. I think that we should, combine the full tapestry of American history, which means teaching what happened to African Americans throughout this country, the great strides that they've made, the things that they've invented to help push our country forward, and the fact that they were a strong, integral part of building the America that we see today. So I don't know why it's not taught to the entire community as a inclusive piece of American history, the same way we would teach the history of our Asian brothers and sisters, our Hispanic brothers and sisters, and all Americans, because, America is a melting pot, and we need to teach the entire history of that melting pot.
I got to be honest with you. I get upset. I get upset when I think about this because I'm kind of getting tired of learning more about the African American experience in our nation's history from Henry Louis Gates on PBS on Sunday afternoons than I would have gotten or did get in my public education right here in the state of Georgia, by the way. That's the sort of thing that really angers me. And I feel like that does have an impact on how we think and how we interact societally and the empathy we have for each other and even, yes, how we vote.
Absolutely. And I think what's happening is we're trying to create the other. We want something that's different from us. And so I agree. And that's why Henry Louis Gates just received the highest award last week at the National Convention, the Spingarn Award, for his public storytelling of all roots, not just the roots of African Americans, but all roots, so that we can understand how we got to this moment. And one of the most important reasons why we need to teach AP African American history is to understand fully the civil rights movement, Reconstruction, and how we have achieved over time a greater diversity of thought in America. Because in order for us to move forward and not repeat the sins of the past, we have to learn from them. In order to learn from them, we actually have to learn them. So I agree with you. It's ruining the ability of the entire nation to know the history, because Black people are going to know the history. We teach the history at our kitchen table to our children over and over again. So they're going to know it, but everybody else is going to be robbed of that rich history.
Gerald Griggs, 13th Georgia chapter president of the NAACP, joining us. But also this has an impact on students who are going to be going to traditionally HBCUs to study African-American history, African-American studies as well, because now it creates an impediment for many of those who may be living in a school district that won't step up and offer the funding themselves.
Absolutely. It's going to create a gap in their educational experience. It's going to make it harder when they go to post-secondary school and when they go to graduate school, because there'll be a gap in that learning, and they won't get the AP credits because, you know, many of our higher achieving students start taking AP credits the end of their junior year and completely through their senior year. So I don't know how this was thoroughly thought out, in that it's creating more of a division and a lack of educational resources than it's solving a problem of, quote, divisive concepts.
Talk to me about what sort of message it sends to prospective residents who are thinking about moving to Georgia.
It sends a very serious message, the same message we were sending back when we were talking about, you know, Georgia have a voter suppression issue, and that's why the All-Star game should not come here. It further entrenches the belief that certain elements of our population in Georgia are just backward. They don't understand that there is a large influence of African Americans that need to be taught. And it's showing that they're trying to revert back to either 1950 or 1850, when Georgia was either a slave state or was a part of the Jim Crow South. And so I think that the people that want to keep Georgia number one for business need to apply policies that are inclusive of a growing diverse population. As America is becoming diverse, Georgia is very diverse, and we need a diverse educational system to keep us number one for business and make us an attractive destination for families to come to raise their children.
Gerald Griggs, 13th President, Georgia NAACP chapter. Thank you for joining the Ron Show today with your thoughts.
Thank you, Brother Ron. It's always good to be with you.
Just about 5 more minutes left on the Ron Show, and I got to be honest with you. I mean, I've been sort of paying attention to this story. I have tabs open, I should say, in my mind and on the laptop here, for this story that I've been wanting to get to. The Georgia Elections Board holding what appears to be an illegal meeting. This from WRDW TV 12 in my hometown of Augusta.
Contentious meeting among Georgia's state election board has now turned into a lawsuit. The issue stems from an emergency meeting on Friday the 12th. Board members who attended the meeting claim it was necessary to finalize several votes from earlier that week, while critics question whether the last-minute nature was legal. Tonight, we have a copy of that lawsuit from the watchdog group called American Oversight. The complaint calls for the court to enforce the Georgia Open Meetings Act to undo any actions taken at that July 12th meeting and civil penalties for the board members who took part. You can find more on the meeting on AtlantaNewsFirst.com.
Oh, yes. Let me first clarify that TV 12 in Augusta was actually sharing that piece from WANF television. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution has been covering this story for a little while now. David Wickert with the AJC filing this story on July 17th. Two rules approved by the state election board in a possibly illegal meeting last week appear to have been suggested by the Georgia Republican Party. Documents obtained by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution show Georgia GOP chairman Josh McCoon sent the text of the rules to board member Rick Jafars several days before the meeting. McCoon also shared talking points summarizing why the rules should be adopted. Jafars, I guess that's how we say his name, and two other Republican board members later approved one of the rules. McCoon suggested and approved a scaled-back version of the other. On Wednesday, two of the Republican board members defended their action. They said the meeting was legal and, though they were appointed to the board by Republicans, they are not doing the party's bidding. Sure, Jan. I'm just trying to do the right things, board member Janelle King, formerly a pundit on Fox 5's The Georgia Gang, told the AJC. The rules we're putting in place will help all Georgians, she said. The state's Democratic Party saw McCoon's influence as further evidence that Republicans are paving the way to challenge Democratic victory in the November presidential election, according to this article in the AJC. The public servants on this board should not act as political arm of the Republican Party, former President Donald Trump or any other candidate, and they should call for another meeting out in the open to restore public confidence ahead of what will be a close election. That is Tololope Kevin Olasanyoy, executive director of the party, in a statement he gave to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Again, just a short segment here, so I'm kind of rushing through the details, and we're going to reach out. In fact, we have reached out to American Oversight to have a guest on the show to explain this in further. The article continues on Friday. Three Republican board members, Jafars, King, and Janice Johnson, all of whom have criticized the conduct of the 2020 presidential election, advanced two more rules, one requiring county election boards to post daily online ballot counts on their websites, and the other would expand the number of partisan monitors during ballot counting. Supporters say the rules will improve the transparency of Georgia elections. But McCoon's involvement drew criticism from Democrats and from left-leaning open government advocacy group American Oversight. Their statement, if the three board members who convened this bogus meeting were spoon-fed proposed new legislation by political party operatives seeking immediate partisan advantage, that might explain why the board members were so desperate to push these changes through in direct violation of Georgia law. That, according to American Oversight in a statement they gave to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Documents obtained by the AJC show McCoon emailed Jafars the text of two proposed rules on July 8th. He CC'd two Republican Party officials on the email, Josh Helton, a senior advisor for election integrity at the Republican National Committee, and Alex Kaufman, general counsel for the Republican Party of Georgia. There's nothing to hide here, Jafars told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution when asked about McCoon's involvement. People can make communications to us. Okay, sir, but he only made communications to the three Republicans on the board. The board met the next day, according to the article here, but after an all-day meeting, board chairman John Fervier adjourned the meeting until the next morning without action on the rules proposed by McCoon. Jafars, Johnson, and King could not attend the next day. So on that day, Fervier announced the meeting would be recessed until an unspecified time. Jafars, Johnson, and King wanted to reconvene the meeting Friday, but in an email to board members, the state attorney general's office suggested a meeting on such short notice might not be legal. The Georgia Open Meetings Act requires at least 1 week's notice for meetings that do not qualify as an emergency, and the attorney doubted the current situation was an emergency. Nonetheless, Jafars, Johnson, and King convened the meeting Friday, along with the board's executive director, Mike Cohen. They cited a provision that allows just 24 hours notice of a meeting in emergency or special circumstances. They said the meeting was needed to act on the rules in time for them to become effective for the November election. But a notice for the meeting did not appear in the election board's website, and the meeting was not live streamed. Jafars said he emailed a notice to numerous people who were interested in the rules and had the notice posted on a meeting room door at the Georgia Capitol. Several dozen people attended Friday's meeting. We'll include that article in the show notes at ronshowetl.com. And again, we've reached out to the folks at American Oversight to further explain why they decided to file suit and why they believe that that meeting and the actions in that meeting were illegal. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. I want to thank Seth Taylor, Democratic Party delegate, for joining us. Also, Gerald Griggs, 13th president of the Georgia chapter of the NAACP, for his reaction on Kamala Harris ascending to the Democratic Party nomination, and, of course, African-American AP Studies going away in the state of Georgia. Show notes and citations at ronshowetl.com. See you tomorrow. Have a good one.